Anybody else besides me see the pattern here? What's going on in France is there's rioting because allegedly the police had abused a young black male with a baton. And so people are responding by rioting. I say people, there's a couple thousand people. Obviously, there's more people in France than 2,000, so there's a lot of people who aren't participating. But they're protesting, they're rioting, they're having speeches. Basically, the proletariat. This is comprised of black people, migrants, people of Middle Eastern descent, aka Muslims. So they're all bent out of shape because a member of the proletariat was abused by the police. Okay, let's scroll up and take a look at the story. Then we've got some comments to make about this. And this particular story we found at France24.com, but it's all over. I mean, basically every major news venue is covering this story. Now, I got to say this parenthetically before I go on. What I do here is I just don't read you news stories. You can do that yourself on the internet because it's all over the place. What we do is we lend insight and commentary and opinion to the stories. That is the essence of what we do, because what is beneath the story is often far more important than the story itself. So that's what we talk about. However, first we got to get to the story before we get to the meat, heart, and soul of what's behind the story. Sporadic clashes, according to France24.com, broke out Saturday in the Paris suburb of Bobigny, I think I pronounced that correctly, where some 2,000 people had gathered to protest against police brutality and the alleged rape of a 22-year-old, it says man, it's a black male, by an officer wielding a truncheon. We would call them billy clubs. The story goes on to say demonstrators held placards reading police rapes and police kill innocents. Is this the spirit of a lynch mob? I mean, whatever police officer has been accused of this has not been tried in a court of law. To my knowledge, some officers were suspended for investigation, but nobody actually knows what happens. Typical lynch mob mentality. No trial. No hearings. Nobody gets their facts straight. Basically, rumors are flying around, so they're out to lynch these people. How is this any different? You know, we'll often hear about the insanity of the Salem witch trials, where people reacted based upon silly rumors. This is what they're doing. Same thing, only magnify it by 1,000,000. So, let's read the next sentence here. It says, while the rally was mostly peaceful, reporters at the scene said clashes broke out after a handful of protesters hurled projectiles. Is there such a thing as a projectile? I guess if you throw a tire, that would be a projectile. Projectiles at police, and several vehicles were set alight, including a van belonging to RTL Radio. I'm guessing that's Russia Today, but I'm not sure. Officers responded with tear gas. So what they're doing is whatever happens to be in their way, they set it on fire. Because they heard a rumor that the police had abused a black male. Okay, let's stop here for a second. And let's look at this image. Okay, what do we take away from this? Well, first of all, look at these French people. There's a black guy. There's a black person. Can't tell if it's a guy or not. This person appears to be of Middle Eastern descent. It's kind of hard to tell. This person, same thing, probably a Muslim. This person, non-white. Okay, let me ask you a question, just for the fun of it. No, not for the fun of it, but because it needs to be asked. This is politically incorrect, I'll give you that warning. What if the only people in France were white people? Kind of like in Iceland, or in the Falkland Islands, or the Isle of Man. You know, there are some exceptions. Or what about Cameroon, where everybody's black? Or where else? Nigeria, where almost everybody's black. Or Sudan, or Chad, or Congo, or the Republic of Congo, where everybody's black. They don't have racial violence in those areas. So here's a question. If you want to know how to deal effectively with racial violence, why don't we look at countries that don't have a problem with racial violence? Well, when we do that, what we discover is the nations that don't have a problem with racial violence are racially homogenous. So whenever you take a white society and you interject Middle Easterners and blacks, and to a lesser degree Hispanics, you're going to have violence. They get upset. Okay, here's another question. Let's just presume, for the sake of argument, hypothetically, that the police officer actually was guilty of what they accuse him of doing. Why are these people upset over that? Well, because it's injustice. Okay, I got it. But, you know, Muslims in particular are horrific when it comes to abusing people. Not only in their homelands, but when they come to Western Europe. You know, how many hundreds and hundreds of cases have there been of Muslims abusing little girls in swimming pools? I mean, literally hundreds, just in Germany. Did anybody riot? Did they burn the van of a news agency? Did they protest? Did they get up and give speeches? You know, you see a pattern here. There's several patterns that you see here, but it seems the far left is kind of selective at getting upset. There's some people it's perfectly okay to abuse them and they don't care. Social justice, they don't even give it a thought. But there are other people who are abused and okay, let's riot. Well, it seems to me to be consistent. It's wrong to abuse people. It doesn't matter the circumstances. If it's abuse, it's abuse. It doesn't matter if it's a little girl being abused by Muslims in a swimming pool or it's a black guy being abused by police officers. They're both wrong. If you're going to riot over one, you should riot over the other. Or if you're not going to riot over one, then don't riot over the other. They're both injustices, and they both need to be perceived the same. I thought cultural Marxists were all about equality. Obviously, they're not. So what's going on here is the far left cultural Marxists are exploiting certain circumstances that fit within their narrative. And if the abuse doesn't fit within their narrative, like Muslims abusing little girls in swimming pools, they don't even talk about it. They don't even acknowledge it, let alone riot over it. So there is an inconsistency. Okay, the question we asked was, what about the pattern? Let's get a little better shot of this. Okay, let's listen to this, and then I'm going to fast forward further down the video here. So we're going to listen to maybe a few seconds of this because it's in French.
Alors la communauté africaine doit se mobiliser. Je suis ici en tant qu'Africaine, mais je suis ici en tant que Congolaise.
Does that look familiar? I mean, here you have black people, non-white people. I think probably all of the ones on the platform here look like they're non-white people. Black, Middle Eastern, probably Middle Eastern, black, can't tell, probably Middle Eastern. So you have non-French people, non-white people throwing a hissy fit in France. So the question is, what is the pattern? And we'll put a link to this video further down in the description section. Let's move up and watch maybe just a few seconds of what's going on here. Okay, there's some rioting. There's some rioting. Loud protest, tear gas. More rioting, more upset. Okay, so the question was, do you see the pattern? And the answer is, yeah, I can see a pattern. And the pattern that I see is this. And again, I got to warn you, it's politically incorrect. But the pattern that I see is white people establish a prosperous society. I mean, you take a bunch of white people. I say this frequently, but you take a group of white people, a couple thousand of them or however many, and you set them down any place on the planet, almost any place on the planet. Because they are intelligent and innovative, what they're going to do is they're going to create wealth. So they create a prosperous and wealthy society. Well, other people who do not create wealth want to participate in the wealth which they cannot create themselves. So they come to the white neighborhood or the white nation or the white region, and they take advantage of the wealth that white people have created. Now, I'm not sure that innately is a wrong thing. I mean, if I were non-white, I'd probably do the same thing. But the pattern is, once they get there, they do what you see happening on the screen. They riot. Or what we saw in the protest in this other video. See if we can find this. You see the woman up here who is... All right, so these people, all of them, as far as I can tell, are non-white. They have come to a white society to take advantage of the wealth created by white intelligence and innovation. And once they get here, they complain about how racist white people are. That is the pattern. And I have a serious problem with that. And that is, excuse me, that's what we take away from this story. If you want to live in white countries, I don't see that's a particular problem. But when you come to white countries to take advantage of our wealth, then turn around and riot and call us racist, that I got a problem with. It's akin to, well, let's put it in this perspective. No matter what happens, they will always, always, always find racism. Always. Necessarily, you've got to find racism. Give you a good example of this. A few years ago, there were some complaints because black people would apply for loans and they would be turned down. And the accusation was it's racism. They're turning them down because they're blacks. All right, so the government got involved and said you can't discriminate against people because they're black. So, okay, we loaned them money. And they defaulted on their loans. And they accused the lending institutions of discriminating against blacks through predatory lending. So if you don't lend money to them, you're racist. If you do lend money to them, you're racist. Either way, you're racist. So the pattern is, here's white people, one more time, here are white people, we establish a prosperous society. Non-white people come in to take advantage of it, which is not necessarily wrong innately in and of itself. But then they complain and call us racist while they're taking advantage of us. Now that I've got a problem with. If you like this video, don't forget to share it on social media. Lower right-hand corner is a button that says subscribe. Click on that. Also, we encourage you to leave comments in the comment section below. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it.
How to subscribe. Click subscribe. Click the bell. Check the box. Save.